So we're going to say welcome back this time because behind the curtain, we recorded this whole podcast and we didn't record any of the audio. So
2 days ago, we had a great conversation.
Oh, it was the best podcast we have ever done. It was going to be, you would have loved it. You would have laughed. You would have cried. It was better than Cats.
We're going to try to remember all of our jokes.
So this is the greatest podcast in the world. Tribute. So it's totally what it feels like.
We've actually been rehearsed on this one. So.
Yeah, so we'll see how it does. So that's the reality of doing these things. Sometimes things go completely sideways. And there were tears this morning when I got in and noticed there was no audio.
The text I got from Dave had a lot of expletives in it that we won't repeat on the podcast.
A lot of squigglies and hash sound, yeah.
So let's kick this off. So last podcast episode, we had Danielle from Alpinestars on.
Right.
She shared a ton of great information with us about Alpinestars, about the brand, about the safety gear, about kind of their philosophy, and specifically a lot about the airbag systems, the tech air systems. I thought it would be interesting, now that we've had a little bit of time to digest that conversation, what were your takeaways from the conversation with her?
After we stopped recording, she said some of the more interesting things because I think it was a little more relaxed. The cameras weren't on. And then she started telling us some of these stories. I think that the biggest takeaway that I really kind of want to compliment them. Well, there's two. But the biggest one, I think, was they have their own helmet testing facility in Italy. Like, they built their whole thing. And because they are a privately owned company and the owner is absolutely obsessed with racing, which she did talk about on the podcast, that he was willing to throw just a ton of cash into making their own helmets and doing their own testing. And that gave me huge reassurance, right? Because whenever a new helmet kind of hits the market, I'm always like, who's making this helmet? How safe is it actually? Like, a helmet's a big deal. And so, yeah, that would really interested me. I'd like to learn more about that.
Well, and I think off the bat, when Alpinestars first announced they're making a helmet, the first question is, well, who's actually making the helmet?
Right.
Because you're a gear, leather manufacturer and boots and so forth. Who's making your helmets for you?
Is HJC making your helmet? Is KYB making your helmet?
But yeah, very quickly we learned that they're making their own helmet. They're doing all the engineering, all the design work on it. To iterate on that a little bit, so they've got their own testing facility, which is fantastic because it frees up the engineering group to try things and test things very quickly. Whereas if you have to, and I'm speaking from an engineering background now, so I've worked at companies that didn't have on-site testing facilities where whatever it was that we were designing had to get sent off to a different lab or a different place to go get tested. Sometimes the lead time on the testing process would actually prohibit a lot of tests, right? If it's going to take you 4 to 6 weeks to get a test result back, you're going to get pretty darn picky about what you even send out the door for testing. Whereas, and I've worked at other places where we had a test facility or a lab of some kind inside the building that didn't cost us anything in terms of like billing the department or whatever. So if you had an idea, you get it approved, you make the design, you get it through a quick prototype testing, and you go straight to the lab with it within days sometimes. You get to test and try a lot of ideas without needing to go through quite the extent of justifying and so forth. And you learn a lot way, way, way faster just by iterating on stuff. So
the other thing that really got me thinking was, we've talked about this on past podcasts, that there's all these different safety standards, right? We have ECE, BCE, the Sharp and Snell and all these things like that. And if you're paying someone else to do your testing, the financial thing is going to be, well, I'm just going to bill to the test.
Yep.
But if you have your own testing facility, I want to imagine, and I'm not putting words in Alpinestars' mouth, that you'd be willing to try different technologies and see, does it work? Does it work if we do this? Can we come up with a better standard? Because you don't have to pay the cost and do the thing. I think she said after the podcast that sometimes they'll do like 13, 14 tests in a day because they can. Yeah. They'll just be dropping the helmet. And then if you have your own testing facility, you can modify it to try a different thing. Like, because they're so involved in racing, they're like, oh, well, there was this really weird crash this weekend. Let's see if we can simulate that in our own test bed and see what the energy, what the joules get passed through. Like, really exciting stuff to me.
Yeah. You touched on one other part in the very beginning, and I think it's worth reiterating that Alpinestars is a privately held company. It's actually the son of the original founder. So Alpinestars initially made mountaineering boots. Well, the son of the original founder is still the owner and in charge of the company, which is great. And coming from, I have experience with private equity companies and with other folks that have worked at private equity companies. When you've got either a publicly held company with a stock price or you've got private equity, it absolutely changes how the company functions.
Right. You're obsessed with quarterly gains, right? Not just that we have to be profitable this quarter, we have to be more profitable than last quarter.
Yeah.
And being profitable, it doesn't always align with being or creating the best product.
Yeah. My experience with it is that, it turns everything into your horizon's very short. You never think 10 years out ever. You think 2 years out, 3 years out, maybe 5 years out, but probably not in reality. And so projects or decisions get made based on a timeline. This needs to hit a certain profitability in a certain amount of time, or the board's just never going to approve the investment. Whereas when you're privately held, like an individual owner like this is, he can make the decision and say, hey, I want to go make helmets, knowing that they're absolutely not going to recoup their money on that helmet investment
for a while,
for years, right? Because, and maybe this is the one drawback really of the Alpinestars helmet at this point, is they only make that SR10 model right now, which is an uber high-end FIM approved model. Most riders aren't going to buy that. It's too expensive for most people. So I think eventually they'll fill out the line and have mid-level helmets, and that's where they'll start to be able to recoup some of it. But they basically went out swinging and made the absolute pinnacle top-level helmet they could from day one, knowing that they aren't going to come close to making their money back for quite a while. And that's a decision that other brands that are, with investment money aren't going to do. They're just not going to make that decision.
And you and I love racing, and I love that Alpinestars is so obsessed with racing because it really is it's our test bed. It's our laboratory. And I don't want to read too much into it, but I do think it's interesting that a handful of MotoGP guys switched to Alpinestars this year. Now you race, I don't, but I think we are both aligned in that I will pay for or I will do whatever it takes to put myself into the safest product available.
Yeah.
Right? Even if one company's paying me to wear a thing and I don't think it's as good as the other thing where safety is concerned, I'll go to the safer thing. I will. Right? And so seeing a lot of riders jump ship over to Alpinestars, I don't know. It makes me pay attention.
Well, and for sure, there'll going to be somebody listening that immediately is thinking it's because Alpinestars pays them, right? And for sure, Alpinestars pays them. They pay lots of riders. That's how sponsorship works. And I'm sure that these guys are making decent money from those sponsorships. But the reality is, there's a great interview with Jack Miller from maybe a year or so ago. And he talked very candidly about the costs of racing MotoGP. He, as a MotoGP racer, budgets about $300,000 a year for training, for physio, for medical, for all of the stuff that's going to cost money throughout the season. These are guys that injuries can end their career early, and they lose out on a huge money-making opportunity by shortening their career a few years. These are not guys who are just going to put on any old suit or any old helmet because they paid the most money, right? They're going to make sure they're in the top quality gear. So yes, Alpinestars does sponsor these riders appropriately because they're all going to get sponsored. But they wouldn't pick gear that they didn't trust at the end of the day. So,
right. I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why I've always paid such close attention to what are the people who are putting the most on the line. What are they wearing? Right.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting over the years, right? We used to see, some brands were pretty prevalent in MotoGP. They're not even there anymore.
Yeah.
And other companies are now coming in.
Yep.
Dainese, which is a company you and I both use and love, they've gone through some structural changes this year, and we don't really know how it's gonna shake out at Dainese. Are they gonna be the same company? Are they gonna follow the same path as like other former beloved brands like Belstaff? Belstaff used to be the pinnacle in motorcycle riding jackets. Now it's primarily fashion gear.
Yeah.
Carhartt has done the same thing. Carhartt used to be like the best work gear now it's gone fashion. And it's because there's more money in that arena than there is in making, like hardcore focus or feature focused garments, right?
And we'll see. To that point, there are a lot of top level brands, but you can name them on one hand typically. It's not that many big brands really. So one of the other things, and we actually got comments on that interview already. One of the questions was regarding ventilation. So to answer, there's a couple questions that kind of all revolved around this. So I'll try to answer those as best I can. We asked her about ventilation. One of the things she explained is when they make garments that are designed to have the tech air systems inside of them, they actually move the ventilation systems around the garment because obviously the air bladder has to hold air. Air can't pass through the bladder, so you're not going to get ventilation through where the bladder sits. So they actually move the ventilation systems around to the rib area and things like that. So air, as the rider is moving on the bike, air funnels into those systems through the garment and helps keep them cool. I thought that was really interesting that because they know the system, because they know the tech air vest, they're designing around it in order to keep ventilation still working.
It does sound kind of like marketing kitsch, right? Like you remember the old Sony cameras and they had their own memory stick, right?
Yeah.
I remember what it was called. And it was frustrating because if you bought a Sony digital camera in the early days of digital cameras, you were locked into that ecosystem. Yep. And so you look at what Alpinestars is doing and you're like, well, are they doing the same thing? But when Danielle sat down and she opened the jacket and she opened the air bladder system, and you could see the vents were perfectly aligned with where the air bladder wasn't.
Yeah.
And it's, you could for sure wear their airbag vest under any jacket. It'd be fine. And she talked about, expansion, has to be enough room for the airbag to inflate and stuff like that. But to see it put together as a cohesive system, again, it was compelling to me, right? Like, as, we age or our lives get busy, riding time becomes finite, right? It becomes the most precious time. And I hate squandering that precious time or having a bad experience because I kind of mismatched, right? I feel the same way about tires, right? I'm doing a 10-day tour. The rear tire, it should make it, but then it doesn't. And then I lose 2 days trying to deal with the tire on the road. So you start looking at like these cohesive systems, right? Like it's all built as a unit. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, does that make me more comfortable? Does that help me really focus on what I love about riding without having to think about, man, I'm hot. The vent is right where the air bladder is. It's not doing any good. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I have to give him credit for that. And it's not, that doesn't have to be specific to Alpinestars. Anybody who's out there making gear or thinking in these terms, I would be very favorable of. Yeah. Like think in those terms. Yeah. Like it's a company, well, obviously focused on racing, but it's a company, they all ride motorcycles. They all experience these things. They're us more than, maybe the people at Belstaff now that are just like New York fashion designers. Right.
Yeah. The other thing, the last thing I think I have on it was when so after we stopped recording the podcast interview, we went and did a little bit of time and she went through all of the gear that she brought with her. So we had kind of examples of every airbag system that they make, which is really cool to get to see them up close and have her kind of basically do a tour of every piece.
Well, from someone who's going to be, she's far more knowledgeable than the average person working at a dealership.
Right? Like she trains those people. Yeah. So what was cool, and so I've been a proponent of airbags ever since they were available, basically. I've had one since 2017. But my current airbag system is a Dionysi airbag system, and it's integrated into the suit. It's all one unit. I had previously been sort of skeptical of this vest separated unit idea. I thought, well, it's kind of cumbersome. It's extra layers. I don't know. As she's going through these systems, for one, they're all way slimmer than I expected. That's full stop. I thought they would be a bulkier, more annoying thing to have on.
Yeah, they're crazy.
They're not nearly what I thought they would be.
And where they're putting like the air cartridges and all the triggering systems.
Totally out of the way.
Yeah, well, even like being thoughtful enough to put the little menu thing not on your ribs.
Yeah.
It's like mountain biking, I had a camelback or a bladder system. It wasn't actually a camelback, but the little buckle was right on top of a rib. And every time I fell over, minor or major, I cracked a rib. And I was like, why do I keep breaking ribs? It wasn't me falling. It was just the design of where they put the little thing.
It was you falling.
It was me falling. But as soon as I went away from that system to a different system, I haven't touched wood. I haven't hurt a rib since.
Yep.
So
I was impressed by that. I also like the idea. So in my airbag, my Dainese airbag system, I've crashed twice. That suit, the leather has kind of been through the ringer at this point because one of them was a higher speed crash. So the leather got fairly damaged and had to be repaired. But both times when I crashed, I had to send the suit off to get the gas system recharged and inspected and repacked or whatever they have to do. It's not cheap. It's a couple $100.
You said it was $400.
It was $400, right? Yeah. Because
doesn't their Tech Air vest cost $600?
But I think the part that I think is really cool about the vest idea now is the idea that you buy that garment, that vest, you keep that thing for 10 years.
Yeah, and they're still updating the firmware on them. They're still servicing them. She said they'll replace batteries from their first gen systems.
So as a club racer, if I have a crash and destroy a suit because the leather's destroyed, I didn't lose the investment of the airbag. I just move it to the next suit, right?
I didn't even think of that. You're absolutely right. You damage the exterior garment, the interior garment might still be
probably fine. Yeah. And again, like as a track day rider, hopefully you're not crashing very often as a track day rider, but as a club racer, I don't want to say it's bound to happen, but it does happen more often.
It's certainly the probability is higher, right?
Club racers crash more often. It's just what it is. So the idea that you could have that protection and not just lose that investment every time you go down the road, I don't know. I was impressed by that. And the fact that you can do the service on your own.
That was a big deal too, right? Even like the dirt bike gear, it has 2 charges in it.
Yeah.
And like it had the little fold marks. He even showed it to us. Like there was one that had been deployed and it just like, this is how you fold it up and put it back together.
Yeah.
And like I did it, like I had never seen the system before and I folded it up, put it back together. First time. It was like all the instructions were printed right on it. And you're like, it's intuitive. It's user-friendly. It's practical for, again, they actually ride, we actually ride. So a lot of the criticisms were kind of resolved before,
So I was impressed by that. I was super appreciative of her coming all the way up here.
Man, she drove, and then she turned around as soon as we were done and drove back. And you're like, holy cow.
Yeah. So anyway, that was really cool. We appreciate Alpinestars being able to come up and do that.
We hope to be doing more with Alpinestars. We're in talks. We're talking with them. I'd love to be able to go see their helmet test facility.
That would be great.
I think that would be so cool. I mean, Italy's great, but like,
good excuse to go to Italy. If nothing
good food.
It's just cool to have them be so kind of an open book about it. Nothing was really off limits with Danielle, and that was really great. So.
Yeah, and back to the helmet thing. Like I made the joke about like I really want them to make the helmet that I tore in, and it sounds like they are. It sounds like they are making or about to release a mid-tier helmet that's a little bit more reasonably priced.
Yeah.
Again, like just really, it's the kind of people I like working with, right? It's awesome.
Should we talk a little bit about racing?
I think we should, because some cool things have been happening over the last like week and a half or so.
So we've got some World Superbike news with the test, but we've also got some MotoGP news that I think we should start with.
Yeah, the MotoGP stuff is what I'm excited about talking about because it's very near and dear to my heart. What does it look like?
Is it pretty?
Is it pretty?
So a couple of the teams now have unveiled their 26 livery and paint scheme and so forth, and the teams have been unveiled and stuff. We've seen, let's see, Pramac, Yamaha.
Yeah, I am so sorry that I called it Pramac Ducati. It was a long time. It was Pramac Ducati. You were right.
No,
I was wrong. Yeah. I'm sorry, and I love you. It's Pramac Yamaha. I won't get it wrong again.
Deeply offended
until they change to some other teams at some point in time. Because Pramac is like, outside of the motorcycle, Pramac is a longstanding team with a really wonderful reputation. Yeah. Like it's a great place for riders to really grow in Pramac.
So they unveiled theirs. The factory Yamaha unveiled theirs. So we can talk about the Yamaha for a second. The Pramac Yamaha paint scheme.
BNG.
I just don't care.
Bold new graphics. And it's the exact same medium exciting blue with medium exciting purple.
What bugs me about it is it sure looks like the designer was completely had their hands tied behind their back, and they were like, you must use these corporate colors together.
Do you remember when Suzuki hired, who did they hire? They hired Troy Lee. They hired Troy Lee to design their paint scheme. And what he came up with, it got leaked out. It was gorgeous. But Suzuki was like, no. That's not Suzuki.
Too much fun.
And they like throttled him back. And I'm like, why did you hire him if you're just going to like make it look like a Suzuki from 1989?
So they do. I actually like purple on like as a color on a bike. It can look great. Aprilia does a great job.
Well, yeah. Like, why is Aprilia's purple so fantastic? Well, everyone else's purple is kind of...
Well, the Pramac, it's like this
My
pastel.
Little Pony?
Yeah, it's nothing about it is cool. The only thing that's cool about this team is the riders.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've got Top Rack and they've got Jack Miller. That is going to be the funnest garage all season long.
Weren't you telling me they were like clowning around during like the photo shoot, doing like goofy poses and trying to out goofy pose each other?
If you go look on social media and find these guys on social media, they were in wherever Pramac did their unveil. And I can't remember. It was somewhere in Europe, I think. So let's say Rome, somewhere, European. There's these great photos of them where like, they're just doing all these goofy poses that were never going to make the official cut. Never in a million years were they going to make the official cut. But they are just a bunch of characters. And so there's one where I think Jack Miller like jumps in the air and Top Rack catches him like his bride or whatever. They did these photos where they're like bent over looking between their legs with their butt in the air. Like they're just total characters about it. And like, you can tell they're already like fast friends and they're going to be an absolute riot. My prediction for 26 is within a round or two, Pramac Yamaha will have developed the wheelie competition or sorry, the stoppie competition.
Because they're both
between their two riders, because those are both great at stoppies. I'm excited to see the two of them duke it out for the stoppie.
Oh man, I really love both of them anyway. And Jack Miller, like we're such huge fans of Jack. So it does my heart good to hear about. Remember him and Pecco were like fast friends, and like everywhere Jack goes, he creates like these lifelong friendships. Yeah,
I think
dude I want to have a beer with.
Oh, those two are going to be.
But you wouldn't have one beer with Jack. You would have like 9, and he would drink you under the table.
He's a dad now. Maybe he's calmed down. We'll see.
I don't know, but he's still Australian. Those guys can hold their beer.
There's this other great clip, if you go look at Top Rack social media, of him on a track somewhere in a Yamaha side-by-side, driving it on 2 wheels, through the corners on 2 wheels. And it's like possibly the most talented human on earth. We'll see how good he does on a GP bike, but he's a phenomenal talent, but just a total jokester.
I'm so excited about that. It was so funny. When you were telling me about that, oh man, I need to go look him up.
They're going to be a ton of fun. The factory Yamaha got unveiled. It doesn't look much different that I can tell.
Yeah, it's like the colors shifted a little bit here and there.
The main thing that I'm seeing, so they're all in the V4. We didn't mention that even, but they're on the V4 engine, obviously. When they do the side-by-side of last year's side, like profile view versus this year's, you can tell the difference, which is interesting. The bike physically looks longer and lower. Like everything just looks more down and in line. Which I think will be fascinating to see if does that work? Is that going to work for them this year? Are they going to be able to be competitive with it?
It's like, if your parameters are this, eventually you're all going to start to end up at the same solution.
Way.
And we're at the last year of all of this. I don't know how much development there's going to be, but yeah. But let's talk about the other. We have VR46.
VR46 got unveiled. So I'm disappointed with the final version of it. It's just yellow and black instead of yellow and white for the most part.
But let's talk about that really briefly. If you were watching MotoGP at all last year, like all the K-Pro Tech, the Kevlar, where it's not leather on their suits, was always this bright yellow.
The like neoprene-ish, whatever material. It's not neoprene, but whatever the material is on the
I think it's
inside.
called K-Pro Tech. It's like a Kevlar something or whatever. And I'm sure they might be using more advanced stuff than we are. But if a rider managed not to crash for too long, that suit looked so manky and disgusting because all the brake dust and all the sweat and the fumes from the fuel, it looked so disgusting. So I think they switched to yellow and black just because if we noticed it, I'm sure they noticed it.
Yeah, there was a couple where you saw Gianantonio on the podium and you'd see that stained inner sleeve.
Because he's not a crasher, right?
Yeah, and you're like, ooh, that's not a good look for the brand. But they did black and yellow.
But it still looks like my printer ran out of ink, right? It's still just looks like, oh, we're out of yellow.
Yeah. I like the brightness of it. I love the yellow. I love
the
the
yellow's
bright
great,
yellow
yeah.
because it stands out and it's really, objectively, it's just a bright color. It's fun to see. But the paint scheme's not that exciting.
Because wasn't the original, they were doing like this 80s splashy thing, looked like a trapper keeper.
Yeah,
and
that
like,
was
yeah.
what bummed me out is in the like build up to their premiere or whatever event, they were posting on social media all of these cool artsy. It was like a black canvas and like yellow paint like splattered at it and white paint kind of crisscrossed. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a really cool like graffiti thing going on. And then they unveil the bike and I'm like,
yeah,
what was all that?
It's really unfortunate. Like everyone thinks it's the 80s paint schemes, but the early to mid 90s paint schemes on motorcycles is what you're picturing. Like all the wiggling lines, all the purple, all the yellows, because not to go too much of a side note, but like that's when we discovered how to make fluorescent paints. That's like fluorescent clothing, because we learned a technology we can make these bright, crazy colors. And so it showed up in everything. And in girls' socks, Madonna, and motorcycle paint schemes, and even leathers, right? We had like the field sheer leathers with like the big zigzags. And I'm surprised no MotoGP team has leaned in on that. And I had hoped that VR46 was going to. So I was so disappointed that it was just my printer ran out of ink. Part 2.
We did kind of gloss over this. Let's hit on this really quick. So the bodywork for the Ducati looks like the bodywork from last year.
Right.
There's probably some subtle differences, but you wouldn't be able to see it and be like, ooh, that's a new thing. Like it looks very much like the 25. The Yamaha looks like a Ducati now.
Right. All the bodywork looks like, and that's kind of what we were saying like a minute ago. It's long and low, and if we have these... like,
and they're all doing on the front one by the number plates, it's kind of this hoop style wing instead of the more mustachy style, for lack of a better word. But when you see it, it's just the hoops. I promise you, if you painted that bike solid black and you painted Ducati solid black, you'd struggle to tell the difference.
But you had a theory on this, and let's talk about your theory on this.
Well, let's get to the Aprilia first, because that illustrates it even better.
The 2 Aprilias and the Ducati, which so far, all 3 of them have done things that have made me very, very happy. Let's start with Ducati.
So the factory Ducati.
Let's start with factory Ducati.
So they brought back some white finally.
Yeah, they brought back the Marlboro stripe, at least in a limited form. And let's do a brief little history lesson on why it's called the Marlboro stripe and why we're so excited about it. So back in the before of 4 times, in the long, long ago, in the 80s and 90s, where tobacco was our energy drink, all racing was basically sponsored by tobacco.
Yeah.
And so if you were sponsored by Marlboro, it was red and white, and you had like that check Marlboro stripe. But then it started happening once you went into the Far East. There was all the like morality laws. You couldn't have tobacco, so they would start like kind of hiding that it was to Marlboro. And so it'd be the same like chevron shape, but it would just be black lines instead of the words. But they got taller in the middle, like LB on Marlboro. And then it just turned into 2 white stripes. And so it just was basically, it was this subversive way of Marlboro's still sponsoring us. We're just going to hide that it's Marlboro, but if you know that it's Marlboro. Yeah. Lucky Strike did the same thing. Camel, Chesterfield, all these Galusses, all these tobacco companies that we don't even have over here. So Ducati and Marlboro have always been pretty tightly connected. Yeah. And so to bring back the white stripe on the Ducati, even if it's just a little bit.
And it's sort of like a blocky racing stripe style, but it looks really classy. It looks great. I like it. It's such a nice change of pace from the like red on red.
I know your factory Ducati and your bikes have been like flat red and shiny red with like little hashy marks. And it looks great. Like it's fine, but it like your freaking Ducati, like you want like that Ferrari kind of excitement. And white and red look so good together because of the contrast. My old 848, you can look it up anywhere. I put a big giant Marlboro stripe down the side of it. It looked fantastic.
So it looks great. We got to see the riders in person.
With I think are they both on Alpinestars?
They were last year too, though.
Oh, that's right. They were both on Alpinestars.
What was interesting, we'll talk just a bit about this. Marc, in an interview, Marc is very aware of what he's saying all the time in interviews.
Probably the most strategic.
You could argue he or Rossi's probably the most strategic when it comes to how they treat the media.
I think that's why they didn't get along, because they're kind of the same
They're
person.
A bit too much the same, yeah. But very, very clever and thoughtful about what gets said and how it gets said, right? this is one of the times where Marc let something slip where if it was intentional, I'm not sure what the end game is. I do actually think this was maybe a slip. But he basically said, because the silly season, all we're going to talk about this next year is the next year. All
we're going to be
talk about
talking a lot about, and there's already things happening with who goes where. And
and so like the silly season part of this is Marc is the first domino in the whole thing, right? No one's going to get a contract signed until Marc signs a contract publicly. But all signs point to him staying at Ducati for the next 2 years at least.
They have deep pockets. He seems happy there.
And he's getting on in years, right? He can't probably afford to go jump to another team, learn another bike to get back to the level of winning championships. He's already in a place that likes him. He's got a good fit. So he's going to stay. Probably what they're negotiating now is the amount of commas in the contract and how many PR events he's on the hook for.
Right, because I imagine he's like enough with the PR thing.
Yeah,
so
I'm done.
He's,
So now again, the money thing, he probably doesn't need much more money. The guy's got plenty. But
it's also interesting, he's had a long-standing relationship with Red Bull, where Ducati has, so again, energy drinks being our modern tobacco. I love the freaking Red Bull replica helmet that we can't buy because we are mere mortals. You actually have to be a Red Bull sponsored racer to get a Red Bull helmet. It'd be interesting to see like if maybe part of the negotiation is to bring Red Bull in, because that would be a lot of extra money in Marc's pocket, right?
Yeah,
you could see him negotiating for that.
I could see. Well, we can talk about that here in a second. Let me finish the thought before I lose it on Marc. So Marc,
the Pecco thing,
in the interview, was basically saying, yeah, I think the silly season is going to start really early this year. You know, there's a lot of riders, basically he's talking about himself and a few others, who will probably have their contracts signed before the season even starts. And then he sort of said, I think verbatim was something like, it's unfortunate because I just don't think Pecco has enough time. And then he kind of cut and changed subjects. But what he was alluding to is, I don't think Pecco has enough time to reprove himself to Ducati in order to keep his seat. Meaning, last year was such a disaster that Ducati's going to have to move on to another rider for that other factory seat before Pecco has a chance to kind of prove himself worthy of keeping that factory ride.
I think you've speculated, and I agree with you, that he's probably going to end up on VR46. He's probably going to take Morbidelli's spot at VR46.
I would think he winds up at VR46 if he stays at Ducati at all.
Wow.
So my guess right now, and the speculation is that Pedro Acosta has basically all but signed on the dotted line to be Marc's teammate in 27.
Those two are not going to get along.
I think it's going to be fantastic.
I think there's going to be walls up in the garage.
But of all the people, it's really, I would say Fabio and Acosta are the next two talents next to Marquez.
Fabio's getting a little old.
Well, he's not super old, but he is not the same aggressive nature that Marc or Acosta is, I don't think.
Right.
I don't think he's the like, yeah, we're both going to crash. You know, I don't think he's that mentality guy. Whereas Acosta absolutely is, I think.
Yeah.
And I think those two will be friends initially and then very quickly not friends.
It has the potential to be Rossi Marquez 2.0.
Well, yeah.
Acosta does to Marquez what Marquez did to Rossi. Now, let's not get too into the weeds on that thing, but as far as like the conflict and challenging each other, pushing each other.
I think those two, if this plays out, anyway, it'll be a great dynamic. I'm excited for it.
It'll give us a lot to talk about. It's helping futures and Cannon Chasers podcast talk.
There we go. Everyone's going to be interested. But that's my guess, is it's going to be Marquez and Acosta in the factory Ducati team in 27. My guess is Pecco is either at VR46 Ducati in 27, or he bails and winds up at Honda or Yamaha potentially, because I would be stunned if Quartararo stays at Yamaha at this point.
Yamaha would be smart to pull him on because of all that Ducati V4 knowledge.
They're going to need him.
Yeah. Quartararo is kind of a wild card because he's made his...
He's rich.
He's made his feelings known, and Yamaha's been paying him an enormous amount of money. But look at it from Yamaha's point of view. Here comes Pecco, another world champion who has way more V4 experience. and is also an incredibly polished, not quite an alien, but like, we don't know if Quartararo is an alien yet either. But like, right there, right there. Yeah, you look at it financially from Yamaha's point, you could see him making that choice.
And I would actually say that Pecco coming to Yamaha is Jack Miller's best chance of staying at Yamaha.
Ooh, I just want anything that keeps Jack Miller in the championship. I'm there for.
Because Pecco's gonna be like, that's my guy. I want.
Yeah, like, I get along with him. He's awesome, and he is awesome.
Yeah,
we need Jack Miller. We need Jack Miller more than Jack Miller needs us.
Yeah, at this point. So let's move on to KTM hasn't unveiled much yet.
Right, they'll probably be the last.
Yeah, theirs is later on, but Aprilia has unveiled.
Yes, and I was very excited. Aprilia has been watching this podcast.
Yeah.
Because they brought back the lion. If you've watched a previous episode, I went on and on about Aprilia's lion logo, and they brought it back. I'm so excited.
We're gonna do a whole episode segment just on Dave gushing nostalgically over old logos of brands. But yeah, they brought back the lion on the logo, which go find Aprilia's.
Yeah, the A
we'll put one up
facing
here.
forward. Yeah, the A facing the front of the bike. Is the lion on both sides. And if you go back and look at like the OG, like RS250 JP, it was like a black bike with like a satin gray lion profile. It was so fantastic. So I was stoked that Aprilia brought back the lion.
So they did theirs. Their bike looks pretty good. I'm still bummed they don't have a true like title sponsor.
I know.
I think that's bizarre to me.
It is, especially like I still think they might be the second best bike on the paddock, especially by the end of last year. What freaking Bez was doing.
Whoever is in charge of getting sponsorships at Aprilia, do your job.
Come on, man.
Get on top of things.
Because let's go to Trackhouse, the other Aprilia team. Now, the normal Trackhouse livery,
blue and black and yellow,
it got a little nicer. It has like a little bit more black, a little more contrast. Looks good.
The yellow on the logo pops a bit more, which is kind of nice.
Right.
But
it's fine.
Yeah.
But their Golf livery that they unveiled at the same time.
Best.
OMG. Yeah. Steve McQueen, Sofa King cool. Like, it's the best livery, I think, maybe in MotoGP history.
Yeah.
That Golf livery on the Trackhouse Aprilia.
It's the prettiest. We'll put some photos up here right now, but that Golf livery, it's as soon as they unveiled it last year at one of the rounds, I think maybe the first round.
I think it was the first round because we saw Iagora on it.
Because Trackhouse, and I can remember this, Trackhouse in 25 unveiled their paint scheme, and you're like, whatever. Yeah. It's just some blue. No big deal.
Blue with some
and then at round one came out this Golf paint job, and you're like, what?
Cow.
You could do this the whole time?
Why are you doing the other thing? No, I get it. Golf's not a title sponsor, but like,
it's so good looking.
Oh my gosh.
So,
it's like, it really is like Steve McQueen's Porsche in the greatest racing movie of all time, Le Mans. And that's your winter watching homework. Go watch.
This is for another podcast, I think, but would you put Le Mans above Formula One still?
I'd put them on the exact same level. Like if we do that S, A, B, C, D, whatever ranking thing, those are S tier movies.
All right.
F1 and Le Mans. Now, Le Mans, you have to realize it was filmed in the 60s, so it's a little slower paced if you're patient, but it's all practical effects. It's actually Steve McQueen driving the freaking car. Like, it's a badass movie. Anyway,
I like that we went on a total tangent.
I know, like on a freaking like.
Anyway,
yeah,
the Golf is gorgeous,
and you can really see the shape of the mustache on the wing on the Aprilia in the Trackhouse livery.
Yeah, it shows off more. I feel like the Aprilia paint, the factory team, it's almost like camouflage because it's so broke up.
Yeah, and then you have like the purple Aprilia red. You know, it masks it.
So let's talk about the bodywork really quick because that's the other interesting thing. If you look at the Aprilia in the photo now, you'll notice they had kind of the mustache style last year. Now they've gone to the hoop, but the hoop on the Aprilia is kind of like this tilted down, melted.
It looks like a saggy,
thing with this really bulbousy front fender and stuff. And you notice that the Yamaha also unveiled their new bodywork that looks very Ducati-ish. What's interesting is I was surprised to see both of them because in past years, all the teams do is they roll out last year's bike with new paint on it because they don't want to give anything away.
Right.
They don't want to tell you what they're working on or why or anything. The fact that both teams rolled out new bodywork this year is one of two things. One is they don't much care and they're willing to show you what they're about to do. That would surprise the heck out of me.
Right.
If they were really willing to just unveil the plan for next year aero-wise, that would really surprise me.
It seems short-sighted. If you're Ducati, let's say,
Mhm.
or even if you're Aprilia, because they are ahead on the aero game,
Mhm.
and they're like, ooh, we got a new cool thing. Let's show the world in January.
With all of the high-res photos they could ever want, right? Not a chance. But what happens in Formula One all the time is when a new car is released, and they do this exact same thing. They troll out all the new sponsors and paint schemes.
F1's starting to unveil all their
F1's
liveries
they're
too.
doing it right now, same thing. They will unveil a version of the car, but it will never be the car that actually sees the racetrack.
It's a bit of a red herring on what aero.
It's a total look over here, distraction, and that's on purpose. My guess is the versions we are seeing of these bikes are maybe an iteration of where they're going, but they've already moved well past it. They've got some version that is 5-6 iterations down the road from what we're seeing on the paint schemes right now.
I really hope that's what they're doing, because that makes it really fun and entertaining to be like, oh, they're tricking you with their little...
Well, because, the only thing that they could possibly want is if I could just get the KTM or the Honda engineers to just go down a rabbit hole trying to figure out what I'm up to for a little while.
Gigi Dall'Igna is not above any of this.
Oh, yeah.
Because maybe you paid more attention. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if I did. When they showed off all the liveries, were there any behind the leg wings?
Yeah.
Oh, there were. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
On the Aprilia for sure. I can't remember all of the bikes, but the Aprilia for sure had them.
I didn't even notice any of the behind the leg wings.
Yeah, but you won't see the final version of them. And actually, there never needs to be a final version because they could change the seat wings all season long. There's no limit on those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that's why the tail you see change all the time and the seat wings.
Oh, but the front
that's
is
unrestricted.
Always basically the same.
Yeah. So anyway, that's our MotoGP segment. Let's talk for a second about World Superbike.
Right, because I think World Superbike is arguably better racing. It's fewer races, but they also lost their kind of crown jewel, their superstar. Toprak's gone. And so what's going to happen in World Superbike without their character?
What's interesting in World Superbike is two main things. Is the new Ducati V4R came out. So that's the new dual-sided swing arm with the little side pods on the fairing and some of the little enhancements. That came out, and that thing is supposed to be just an absolute weapon.
Right.
It looks insane.
It does indeed, yeah.
A little bit more about that in a second. But the other thing is on the BMW, you now have Miguel Oliveira and you have Danilo Petrucci on the BMW.
Unbelievably talented riders.
I mean, Miguel Oliveira, I think, is a little underrated because he had such a rough season, his last season in GP. He's won multiple MotoGP races.
I would agree. I could see Oliveira showing up and just cleaning house, especially with the absence of Toprak.
Yeah, he should be a pretty good benchmark competitive-wise. Now, the real question is, was it Toprak that made the BMW look good, or is the BMW actually good at World Superbike level?
You could go both sides on that because I've heard both arguments. Right?
Well, I mean, when he won it the last two seasons, none of the other BMW riders were close, frankly.
That's why I think it's him, not the bike, to be honest with you.
And I would agree. I think he wasn't just the difference maker. He elevated the whole program.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but let's see. Can Danilo Petrucci and Miguel Oliveira do the same thing? I don't know. But I think they're a very good benchmark for what is that bike really capable of doing.
Here's my worry about World Superbike, and tell me what you think about this, is that back in my day, when I was a kid, World Superbike was effectively, they were homologated bikes, right? That they were 750s mostly at the same time, the YZF 750, YZF for our international view. But anymore, the Ducati and BMW are really the only ones building superbikes. The Kawasaki is pretty close, but the R1 is kind of ancient. The Honda is almost a back marker, right?
Yeah.
And so what's going on with World Superbike? Because and now it's starting to conflict on lap times with MotoGP. MotoGP is going to go to smaller bikes. Should World Superbike also go to the superbikes that are actually being built, which aren't instead of Super Sport and Superbike, we just go to what's actually being made.
Like the middleweights, you
Yeah,
mean?
like the R9, right?
Yeah.
Like or the KTM, the
Yep.
RC 990.
Yeah.
Which is like that seems to be where the superbikes are now. And so I feel like World Superbike might be in a little bit of an identity crisis, and it's less appealing for me to watch because it's not the motorcycle that I can buy.
Yep.
I can't afford a Panigale Wally
V4R.
$60,000 thing. I may as well go buy a Porsche GT3 RS.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. They're a bit of it feels like kind of a crossroads coming soon. They're going to have to do something because with GP going to 850s and with the more limited aero, no ride height devices and so forth, they're going to be fairly on par with World Superbike in terms of power. It's probably going to be in the like 250-ish range.
And we should also mention before, like without cutting you off, is that World Superbike has much more advanced electronics than MotoGP.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like World Superbike doesn't have a spec ECU like GP does. How they control it is it's basically claiming rules. So you can put whatever electronics system you want on the bike, but another team gets to buy it from you, no questions asked, for a certain dollar figure. And I don't know what that number is, but let's say it's 40 grand or whatever. So it's not in your interest to put $1 million electronic suite on your bike because I'm just going to buy it from you for nothing.
And then I'm going to reverse engineering and I'm racing your system.
So that's kind of how they sort of cap it. Now, that's even with those rules, they're building stuff that's way crazier than what GP even gets to build in terms of sensors and algorithms and whatnot. So yeah, they're arguably a more advanced electronics package for sure. But yeah, they're going to be, because if you think about the new rules they're estimating like 2.5 seconds slower on GP bikes.
Right.
That's going to put them dead in line with World Superbike at a lot of tracks.
Right. Now, to be fair, like World Superbike, shorter races, softer tires, blah, blah, blah. But like, they're going to be on the same tires pretty soon.
No. What's interesting is as the same year GP switches to Pirelli, World Superbike switches to Michelin.
Oh, I was not aware of that. Okay.
But I mean, think of there is no way to get better Michelin tires. This is like a woman's scorn, right? Like Michelin is going to go hell or high water. We are making faster tires than Pirelli made in World Superbike.
Oh, I kind of hope so.
Going all in.
We all benefit when that happens.
Yeah, the chip on Michelin's shoulder coming into the 27 season is going to be massive.
Oh, that's good for us.
So yeah, they're throwing everything at it. They're going to have to. So anyway, that will be interesting to see. But it still stands to your point. What is Dorna going to do to try to they got to do something.
Yeah, and it's confusing because there's 2 world championships. It's
my vote would be that they basically just across the board bring it from super bike spec down to more like a super stock.
Okay, all right.
Just knock the electronics down, knock the performance down, knock everything down enough to also make the bikes cheaper, but make it more attainable so more teams can go participate.
Oh, I like that idea.
So BSB does this great thing on their superbike level. I think it's still the rule. I haven't watched BSB for a few years, but they basically ran an electronic system that had no TC. It had no wheelie control. It had very limited everything. I think you could do some engine braking mapping, but that was it. It made the racing fantastic. The top riders were still the top riders. But you basically had to build a bike now that was very rideable. So it had to be easy to deal with, easy to manage. You couldn't just go for chasing horsepower because if this thing's going to throw guys in the weeds all the time, it's no good, right? So I think that was a great little experiment that BSB has done that showed hey, it's actually possible to lower the electronic intervention.
And BSB racing is...
Oh, it's so good.
It's excellent.
Yeah, it's so good.
And it turns out really high quality riders.
Yeah, those are great guys. So anyway, that's what I would love. I'd love it if they just brought the whole level down and it wasn't quite so unobtainium and it was a bit more realistic.
I would really like it too if when I watch World Superbike, it's a motorcycle that might be parked in my garage. Right?
More attainably, right? For sure.
Yeah. That's why the whole the R9 idea is appealing because I'm never going to ride a MotoGP bike, right? I got to spend some time on a Desmo Sedici eons ago with the carbon brakes and it was terrifying. Mm-hmm. But That's a unique situation. For the rest of us, a MotoGP bike is like looking at a Formula One car.
It's nothing like,
And if we did, we'd suck anyway. We'd stall it coming out of the garage. But World Superbike should be something that I
should be able to picture.
And I should myself doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that would be my hope. Now, there's another camp that says they shouldn't be super bikes at all. They should be sport touring bikes. They should be naked bikes.
I think that's a different thing.
But in my mind, I just lose interest when you go so far from...
Yeah, it's like the bagger class. It's entertaining. But like even being honest about the bagger class, which I think we're both fans of it, the highlight reel's better than the actual race.
Yeah.
Because the race is kind of... You're racing things that are not designed to be raced. But again, I totally get that like the dude sitting in the stands like, well, I have a Tour Glide. My Tour Glide's capable of that.
Yeah.
Not at all. But I get the connection, right? Like my bike's now better than Indian or whatever the case may be. And we've talked at length about if they did an adventure bike class, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's not the same thing. So at any rate, that's what I hope what happens. One of the things that's interesting, speaking of these bikes getting too close to MotoGP, I'll try to find some photos that we can put up here. But if you look at where they're going with the bikes now, they're talking about... So MotoGP on Michelin tires, the rear tire is so good. They have these rear ride height devices, all these things. We have seen this progression over the last 5 years of the bikes getting lower and longer.
Right.
Every season.
To leverage how good that rear tire is.
To keep it from wheeling, to keep weight on the back end. And they've turned into these sort of drag racing bikes that can get through a corner.
Right.
Right. That's like now they still are amazing cornering machines. I'm not dismissing that, but they're emphasizing so much the stability and the acceleration of the bikes that's how they're starting to look. You're seeing that in World Superbike now. The new Ducati V4R, when you watch the riders get on it, now they don't have ride height devices, right? So they're not artificially lowered. But when you watch the guys roll out of the pits, the bike looks long and low. The swing arms look super long.
It's the blending of the advantage of a cruiser and the advantage of a sport bike in the most measurable way.
I think what's fascinating is you're seeing like Ducati sort of leading the charge, of course. They're taking these applications and these things that they're learning at the MotoGP level, and they're like, there's no reason it can't work on the Pirellis in World Superbike. So you're seeing the bikes start to look a little different. And they talk about the BMW, Toprak was a big proponent of this, was he loved to sit in and low in the bike. So much so that there's these great, I was listening to a podcast with another guy talking about how they were modifying the gas tank so Toprak could sit lower.
Oh, wow.
So literally a seat pan could be a couple mils lower than it was before, because that would allow him to brake better and everything else. But you're seeing this progression of, we used to kind of get to this more, a lot of like production bikes that go racing or go to the track, you see guys raise them a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's more nimble. It's easier to move the bike through corners. But now we're almost going the other way, where they're becoming more low and down and letting electronics handle more in order to let the bike be a better accelerating and performing bike in a straight line. So anyway, it's interesting to see that coming in World Superbike now.
Yeah, it's fun to follow. And it's hopefully they're watching the podcast and they do what we advise.
Yeah, listen to us.
I mean, Aprilia's been listening to us. We got the lion.
Got the lion back. But other than that, I think World Superbike's going to be interesting. I think that V4R is going to be great with Bulaga is on it.
Heck yeah.
Bautista's on it now. I think Iker Lecuona is now the factory team, and he's a talent. So I think it's the odds-on favorite still. But I'm just very curious to see what happens with the BMW team.
And the other wild card too is what is Liberty Media going to do with World Superbike? Because even Dorna ended up with MotoGP or not World Superbike kind of by accident,
right?
So it's kind of been. I mean, the joke if you talk to anybody who actually races is like, don't tell anyone how much fun we're having over here at World Superbike.
Right.
It's this really great place for people to go extend their careers, go have success. Miguel Oliveira, it's going to be really fun to see what happens to him. But I think from my perspective, World Superbike might be more tenuous in its future of what's going to happen than even MotoGP. World Superbike could look wildly different in 2 years than it does now.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about today, and I think this will be probably our last thing we go over today, but you recently went to LA.
Right.
And did a bike review on the Rebel 300.
The Rebel 300, yeah.
So I don't want to talk about the Rebel 300 today. You've done.
You don't think our audience is interested in an entry level learn to ride motorcycle?
You did a whole video on it, and if people are really curious, they can go check that out.
No, and I like the bike. I'm not like making fun of the bike at all. The bike is actually very important, I think, in the scheme of motorcycling.
But I think what's interesting, and what maybe others might find interesting, is this was unique because the last couple you did, the Aprilia, Touareg, and the Transalp, and some of these other Hondas and stuff, they basically gave you the bike and said, all right, off you go. And you were on your own schedule, making your own plan with the bike.
That's easier content to make because I have absolute autonomy.
Yeah.
I can think about the idea. I can write the script. I can do all the research long before I see the bike.
Yeah.
With all of these press events, I hope you guys are interested behind the things. Yeah. I don't really know, right? Like, with Honda, I kind of knew because like the Rebel 300 is not a brand new model, but I don't really know, right? And so I do all this research beforehand. Like I try to pre-write as much as I can so I go in prepared. And then you hop on the bike and then it's abject fear, right? Like even you walk in and you're like, well, all these professional journalists are there. We have Ari Henning and we have, we have Adam Waheed and like really top level journalists and Dave, kind of a
the cane chaser guy.
Right.
Yeah,
and it's like, and there is like an animosity between traditional media and YouTube media, but you still go in with kind of like this level of anxiety. Can you keep up? Now you're on a brand new motorcycle you've never ridden before. You're on roads you've probably never seen before. I'm lucky enough that I'm close enough to California. I've been in a lot of these places. They're not totally new to me, but some of the other more like YouTube content creators had never been to on these roads before. And it's really interesting, this kind of like anxieties. And I got to be unique in my content while I'm experiencing the exact same thing. All these other feel like the same corners, the same breakfast, the same lunch, the same dinner, and the same corners.
Well, and I think that's the part that, to me, that's the interesting part because you're around bike people. These are your peers in a sense, right? They're all bike people. They all want to be doing these things. For sure, when you go to dinners and you're sitting around having a drink or whatever, you're talking about what you're doing there. You're talking about the bike, or you're talking about, how do you not get overly influenced by what you're hearing or this guy's opinion of this thing? Like, how do you block that out, I guess?
It's a really great question because I will say flat out that on all these events I've been on, I get along with them greatly. They are us, right? Mm-hmm. They are motorcycle nerds at the same level that we're motorcycle nerds. And we just all know the most random, obscure details about every little model. And so we get along, right? And so you have kind of this shorthand. You're joking and laughing immediately. But I've noticed in past press events that some of the observations or offhand funny quips that I thought were funny, they thought they were funny too. Some of the little quips I make along the way will get put into their content, word for word, something that I said, right? And so there's like this little bit of guarded, how observational I can be. Now, I try to do it the other way. Jake from Spite's Corner, he's fantastic, by the way. Jake is just a great, great guy. And he asked me a question that got me thinking about it a little bit differently. And rather than trying to steal his idea, I attribute to him where the thing came from in the video, because I think that's fair, right? YouTube is a beautiful place in that it's not like magazines, right? Where you're likely only going to buy Motorcyclist or Cycle World. You're not likely to buy both. But YouTube is different. And you can see if Jake has a good video on a topic or Doodle on a Motorcycle Carolyn has a good video on a topic, we all rise together, right? People tend to watch the same thing. So we all kind of win. It's not as competitive as it feels. But also, don't be taking my ideas, or if I take your idea, I'm going to give you credit for it. That's how I kind of see it, right? Not that it's personal, like it's fine. I'll make another video. It's cool.
Yeah. Well, and it seems to me, because I watch car reviews. There's a handful of car channels. Like I like Throttle House and Savage Geese, and there's a couple of car ones that I enjoy too. And they all have their own little flavor, but for sure, it seems like it's against the rules to do a review of a car or a bike and not be negative about something.
Yeah, and that's a really, there are some content creators in my space that I don't get along with, and nor does anybody else, right? And I'm not going to say who they are. You can probably figure it out. But I've talked to them specifically, and they'll say, this year I'm going to be anti X brand. My whole kitsch for this year is I'm just going to on this brand all year long. And I just don't see any value in that. I don't think that's just as invaluable as just gushing on everything.
Right.
My personal approach is it's hard to buy a bad motorcycle right now. And so I guess my whole litmus test is it being honest with what it is, and is marketing being honest with you with what it is, right? Like the Rebel 300 was a pretty easy one, right? Like it's an entry-level motorcycle. Is it honest with what it does? I thought, yes. I thought it absolutely was. It could do both things. It was just fine. I'm not comparing it to like a Hyperstrada or something like that because it's not a different thing. But one of the other reviewers kind of nitpicked a thing really intensely that I didn't even experience, right? Is like, oh, this one aspect, I can't stand this about it. I didn't even notice it or feel it or experience it. Now, that could be like a difference in just like whatever, he got bike 396 on the serial number.
Sure.
Like
his was just a little setup different or whatever.
And again, I really like the person who did that. Like I get along with them really, really well. But I just don't see value in, I got to say something bad about it.
Yeah.
There's always things that might could be improved, but how much of that is just my bias, right? Like, well, the handlebar angle hurts my wrist. Well, that's my wrist. That's not your wrist.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think when it comes to like reviews, there's ends of the scale, right? There is the hyper analytical end of the scale, the like for car reviewers, this would be like Doug DeMuro, right?
Yeah.
Where he's going through and he's explaining how the ashtray works.
Right.
There's that level of, and thank God he's there, because if you want to buy that car, you want to go watch his video first and understand all the quirks and features that you're going to love or hate.
Right. In our world, that's Big Rock Moto.
Yeah.
I love that dude. He'll make a 45-minute video and he's funny. He's like, point number 6. And he'll say point 6. And he goes down it.
Yeah.
And it's not content that I like to watch. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. Yeah. And his content's getting a ton of views because there's people who want that level of specificity.
But I think the beauty of like a YouTube is when you want that, if you're like genuinely considering buying this thing, you should go watch their video because he's going to explain all the little details.
Yeah.
But a lot of these other ones are much more like Top Gear-esque, where it's sort of the entertainment and the story and the fun of it. And like, and I happen to be on the Rebel 300, or whatever. I think there's kind of ends of the scale here. So I don't think it's always like, oh, well, all I want is these types of things. I kind of am curious about the whole thing of it all, right?
Right. I look at it as, you're going to probably gravitate towards a reviewer who you agree with or you get along or you like the way they do things, right? I personally, I try to shy away from the spec sheet because to me, that's easily accessible information.
Yeah.
Right? I really try to lean in, what is it actually like to ride the thing? And it's hard for me to go into the shoes of a new rider because it's been so long since I've been a new rider. So I try to approach it as I'm a skilled, trained, proficient rider. What am I sensing? And one of the things I gravitate towards, because to me, it determines the whole motorcycle, is the trail number. Now, most reviewers don't even understand what the trail number is. They don't know what it means. And so even on the Rebel, I'm like, this is the trail number, and this is why the bike feels this way, because it has this number. I feel like that helps someone shopping for a motorcycle because they can be like, well, I don't necessarily like this bike, but I like what he said about how it handled. Yeah. I can go find another bike with a similar trail number. It's going to handle similarly, and it will, right? And so trying to approach it that way from more of an esoteric, what does it feel like kind of a thing. Now, I will say, I make content for you, and if that's not what you want to see, let me know, right? I'm just trying to be unique. Right? Yeah. There's a ton of content creators out there who will go for a ride and read you the spec sheet and say they hate this feature or that feature.
Well, and I think the part I like is some of like the history lessons that you do sometimes, right?
Well, because I'm old, I got to do the history lesson, right? Like
Who else is going to do it?
I remember when the Transalp came out.
Yeah.
I remember when it showed up on MacGyver. Of course, that's going to be part of the story, you know. But like if you're like a Xennial or whatever they're calling themselves now, that may be completely irrelevant to you because like. Who cares, old man? Like I wasn't around in the 80s. That's like, but I love, to me, when I buy a motorcycle, I want to know why the motorcycle I chose is cool.
Mhm.
And as someone who has a minor in history, where the bike came from is interesting, right? Like how did this bike get here?
Dave's all about the origin story.
I love the origin story.
Yeah.
That's a great way to say it. I love the origin story.
I think this is the first time we've ever actually had notes and stuck to our notes.
I know we did a good job.
Episode.
There is one more thing I do want to kind of talk about.
Yeah.
So we have 2 channels now. And on the main channel, we have memberships. But if you're a member on the first channel, it doesn't give you any of the perks on this channel. So I'm thinking about, and I kind of want to hear from you, I'm thinking about launching a Patreon that if you help us out on Patreon, you would get the perks from both channels. And like, I want to be
all the
honest.
content's in one spot.
Yeah. And I want to be honest about it, like doing the podcast and doing all the content, and like, we're a small show here. There's not a lot of extra big perks, but when you become a member of the channel or if you signed up on Patreon, that extra cash, it really helps. It really, really helps. And then you get I get a more of a direct line to you.
Yeah.
Because I figure you're the super fan, and that's really who I'm making content for. So it helps me make decisions. So let me know if you'd be interested if I just did a Patreon that covered both channels, because I think.
Well, and like a Patreon would be cool because there'd be a channel for sort of the fans to ask questions that we would directly answer.
We can make, Patreon gives us more options than the YouTube memberships.
Yep.
YouTube memberships, it's really limited in I can make content members only, or you can get early access. I don't know how valuable that is because like I've talked to a lot of people who love the channel. And they're like, well, I don't care if you upload it on Tuesday or Wednesday. The only time I really have to watch YouTube is Saturday. Yeah. So an early release
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? But some of the more direct connections, Patreon also gives us a couple of little things I can do for you that, but let me know.
I think it'd be fun. Like we could do like an AMA or
I'd
all
love
kinds
to do
of stuff.
AMAs. Yeah. We've done a couple where we've just answered questions and people seem to really love those.
And they're fun.
And they're a lot of fun. Yeah. And they're way less scripted. So
yeah, I have very little prep to do on those days.
Yeah. Yes.
Great. Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Well,
all right. Thanks for like the greatest podcast in the world tribute. I hope we lived up to
the original was so good.
The original was probably a little better, but like this wasn't bad.
Cool. Well, thanks guys. We will see you next week.
See you next week.